In this video, we're going to look at the drum editor. Now, you'll recall a while ago I programmed up these hand clap parts, and this is what they sound like. Now, I'm going to hit F2 to open up the editors, and we see it on the regular piano grid style editor. But we can click this drum button to get to the drum editor. Now, this displays color and names of the loaded Impact XT kits automatically. Now, the thing about the drum editor is that note length isn't shown. It's not really relevant since drum samples are generally one shot. So since note length isn't shown, we can click and drag across the grid and enter multiple new notes at the division values set by the quantize setting. And we can do that with the pencil tool. And it makes creating drum patterns and fills and rolls and that kind of thing really easy. So I'm going to hold down Command to get to the pencil tool. And my arrow is the default tool, but I can just hold Command down. And for quantize, here's the quantize panel. I have it set to straight 16th notes, and I'll add a bit of swing. And I can just drag across and create, for example, hi-hat 16th notes like that. And you can hear that bit of swing involved. So let's select these. And since I have this real-time automatically quantize selected notes enabled, as I dial up the swing value, you'll see every second note shift a little bit when I release the mouse. So very interesting. I'm going to leave a little bit of swing on that. And then we can, of course, just put in the notes that we want with the pencil tool by clicking. And again, because the quantize grid is set, it'll place them right on the grid. So I'll put a kick drum there and maybe another one there. Like that. And there's a snare drum. And of course, click and get the sounds. I'll put that on 2 and 4. And I've got a little drum groove. So kind of hi-hat heavy. Let's select all these, and we can adjust the velocities a couple of different ways. Now, we know that we have this lane here. I can click and drag them, but let's look at some automated ways of doing it. I can go under the action menu, and let's open up the velocity window. And here, I can't really randomize from here. I can add or subtract, and I can multiply, so I can get a variation based on a percentage of that. So let's just reduce them a little bit like that. And there we got that randomized or lowered. Still a bit loud for my taste. So let's go back here. Let's go to the add field and I'll just reduce them like that. Maybe they'll be too quiet. So you can see how you can manipulate velocities easily that way. Let's add a little bit like that. Bring them back up. And we can always use the humanize function to randomize velocity range like that. Well, this will affect the timing as well. Now I've got my kick and snare programmed in. I can easily just select these and hit copy and place this here and then hit paste. And I've got my 2-bar pattern with the hand claps intact. I think those are still a bit loud. So with them all selected, I can easily just drag like that. Now we can customize the view here with the wrench icon. We can do a few things. We can hide instruments not being used. Like, for example, I'm not using the tambourine, so I'm just going to click that and that'll hide it. I'm not using these additional bass drums. So you can really customize your view like that. And let's click that to close it. Now I can zoom a little bit more and get a bigger view of the notes that I am using. And we can also, with the wrench icon here, type in the names. So if you want to customize the names, or if you're using instruments that are non-XT instruments, third-party drum instruments, you can just type in the names there. And we can reorder them. Maybe I want to view the hand claps at the bottom below the hi-hat. So let's close that up and we'll see that the claps are now at the bottom. And when it comes to working with other non-Impact XT instruments, we can import drum maps into the drum editor rather than just typing them in manually. And there's a large library of third-party drum maps available at the PreSonus Exchange section on the website. So if I switch there, you'll see that on the Exchange section, there are all kinds of assets that are available, but under pitch names, we get drum maps for various third-party instruments. There's Stephen Slate Drums 5, there's Superior Drummer, Get Good Drums. So all kinds of already existing libraries that you can just download and then click the wrench icon and drag the drum map file onto the list of patch names. Now, there's lots of interesting things we can do to manipulate MIDI in these panels over here, from selecting notes, applying scales, transposing, offsetting velocity, and humanizing like we've looked at. I like this one, thin out notes. Now, I've got all these 16th note hi-hats selected, and I can simplify the part, and I'm going to have it just randomly delete notes based on 16ths, and I'll leave the amount 50%, but we can have it randomly delete more or less notes. But let's leave it like that and hit OK. And let's see what kind of interesting part it's given us. So that's kind of an interesting variation. Let me hit undo, and I'm just going to reselect these notes, just the hi-hat notes. And I can now right-click, and it'll be in my recent items. There's thin out notes. And let's try it again at the same value, and we get different results. So you can just try it a few times until you get results you like. Now, here's another thing we can do. Let's say I want to randomize these velocities on the hi-hat note a little bit. I'm going to use some of the different actions. I'm going to use the selection criteria to start with. Now, if I go to range, I'm going to select the pitch to just F sharp 1. I've got this set already, but it's F sharp 1. You just simply drag the left and right handles here to determine a range. In this case, I want only one note. So I'm going to click OK, and it's selected those. And now what I want to do is refine that selection at interval, so I can determine every specific beat or every event count. Let's leave it at every event count, every second one. Let me just hit OK. And now it's selecting some of them. And with those, I can now offset the velocities. So it gives it a lot more interesting flavor. Now, that's a lot of work for a simple 2-bar pattern, but it's more effective if it's a longer part. Let me hit undo and just bring them all back to normal. And let's look at another way to do it. I'm going to start by just selecting these hi-hat notes manually, and I'm going to use the humanize function, which we've looked at before. But here, by setting these values to 0, we can bypass any timing offsets and just randomize the velocity range. So this should work pretty nicely for a nice subtle effect. Let's hit OK. And there's some nice little subtle variation. So those are some ideas on using the drum editor and some of the different action functions. We'll see you for more in the next video.